She thought at her age no one would ever look at her like that again. Until that look from the one she was never meant to desire. It is often said that certain wishes begin as innocent desires, only to transform into something far more complex. I once held that belief. What damage could a mere wish cause, after all? A solitary reflection, a gentle aspiration. Yet, certain wishes remain anchored, refusing to drift into oblivion. Certain things endure. They rest in your chest, heavy and still biding their time. On his birthday, my nephew whispered a wish into the universe. That seemingly simple wish transformed everything. I longed for the moment when I could have simply brushed it aside with a laugh. How I longed for the moment I could have turned my gaze elsewhere. A pang of hesitation gripped my chest as he met my gaze and uttered those words. I long for a companion who truly understands me. A person well-versed in the art of love. All around, laughter erupted. I did not. I was unable to. For I understood, beneath the surface, that desire had little to do with any girl from school. His gaze met mine directly. In that fleeting moment, the very foundations of my understanding of love, family, and boundaries began to splinter. I attempted to convince myself that it was insignificant. Please hold on for a moment. Only a figment of my mind. Yet a flicker within me awakened. It felt like an eternity since anyone had laid eyes on me. Not merely glanced, perceived. Indeed he did. I find myself pondering what could possibly be more troubling. Whether he noticed me or if I allowed it to happen. If only I had mustered the courage to decline. Yet I refrained. Thus unfolds the tale of the events that transpired as a result of that moment. Join Heartfelt Tales Unfold to explore true stories that reveal the intricate layers of the human heart. Believe me, what follows is something you definitely won't want to overlook. Never did I imagine that Eli's birthday wish would become the catalyst for our unraveling. Yet perhaps it had begun much earlier than that. I am 38 years old. Without children. Unemployed. The flame has dimmed in my marriage. Once I brimmed with vitality. I truly did. Once I was filled with dreams, ambition, and laughter that could light up any room. Yet, existence has a tendency to gradually exhaust one's spirit. Gradually, over time, you find yourself gazing into the mirror, and the reflection staring back seems almost foreign. Daniel, my husband, is not without his merits. He toils diligently, covers the expenses, he exhibits a courteous demeanor. Yet he remains absent. He exists in my world, yet remains distant from my side. Not quite, though we share the same bed. It seems as if we inhabit entirely separate realms. He once caressed me as if I held significance. Now it feels as though he doesn't even notice my presence. Conflict is absent. Lack of enthusiasm, only quietude. We floated softly and gradually, akin to a vessel untethered from its mooring. When I lost my job last fall, I hoped it might draw us nearer together. Yet, it only exacerbated the situation. He immersed himself further into his tasks. Extended periods of time, meetings that stretch into the late hours. The sporadic justification that failed to align perfectly. I found myself devoid of the energy to pose any inquiries. I found myself engrossed in the art of feigning indifference. Then arrived the season of summer. And with it, my younger sister Tessa arrived to spend some time with us. She embodies all that I lack. Vibrant, whimsical, radiant and full of life. She enters a room and instantly, it brims with sound and vitality. She arrived with Eli in tow, 19. Lofty, 40, gentle in tone. He has consistently shown a gentle kindness. Consistently courteous. From a young age, he trailed behind me. His curiosity bubbling over in a stream of questions, eager to lend a hand. He referred to me as his awesome aunt. I once viewed him through the lens of childhood, yet this time he had shed the innocence of childhood. He entered our home, carrying an energy I hadn't known I was longing for. Not merely youth but existence, inquisitiveness, embrace. He would flash a smile upon seeing me, inquire about my well-being. Hold on for the response. It is peculiar, the memories that linger in your mind. A fleeting touch of fingers as a dish is exchanged. A compliment that hangs in the air, stretching out its presence just a moment too long. His gaze transcended mere observation. It delved deep within me. I observed, and then I loathed myself for being aware. Yet, the reality? It had been years since I felt so vibrantly alive. With each instance Daniel chose to disregard me, each moment he faced away in bed, each time he offered a mere nod while I spoke, Eli stood present, and I loathed the extent to which I started to crave that. That night, we gathered around the table to celebrate Eli's birthday. The grill was ablaze with heat, the sun dipped below the horizon. Tessa was in fits of laughter over something. In that moment Eli uttered his wish. It was nearly insignificant. A humorous quip. A fleeting remark. I long for the presence of someone genuine. A person who truly understands me. A person well-versed in the art of love. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Yet I raised my gaze. He was already gazing in my direction. He remained utterly still, his gaze unwavering. No smile appeared. He held my gaze, as if attempting to convey a message without uttering a single word. I averted my gaze. Yet, a transformation stirred within me. I made an effort to overlook it. I convinced myself that it was all just a figment of my imagination. Yet, in that stillness of the night, as I lay beside my husband, the only sensation enveloping me was the profound silence. Eli lingered just down the hall. For the first time, I found myself devoid of the weighty mantle of adulthood within the confines of my home. I sensed the presence of the outsider. I reassured myself that it was insignificant, yet an unseen force had begun to stir. A line had been etched so delicate that I could easily convince myself it was non-existent. Yet it was, and I would traverse it. Never did I imagine that Eli's birthday wish would become the catalyst for our unraveling. Yet it was. Surely it was merely a jest, wasn't it? That is precisely what I reminded myself. Yet, in all honesty, it lacked the essence of humor. At that particular instant, no, it wasn't expressed in the manner he intended, and particularly not the way he gazed at me afterward. We found ourselves seated outdoors, gathered together, loved ones share a meal, while the soft glow of candles dances in glass jars. The warmth enveloped the surroundings, a languid summer heat that rendered everything languorous and intimate. The aroma of grilled corn mingled with the bright notes of lemon zest in the air. Tessa busied herself with refilling drinks, while Daniel remained absorbed in his phone, as was his usual habit. Suddenly, without any preamble, Eli simply uttered the words, "I long for a companion who truly comprehends my essence, a person of wisdom, capable of imparting lessons on the intricacies of life and the depths of love." Laughter echoed naturally. Tessa flung a napkin in his direction. Daniel remained utterly unfazed, his gaze fixed elsewhere. I conjured a smile. I attempted to engage in the game, yet within I sensed a flicker of movement, an unexpected turn of events. He remained silent while the others laughed around him. Neither did he waver nor betray any emotion. He lingered on my gaze for a moment that stretched just a bit too far. As the night drew to a close and the atmosphere began to settle, I found myself in the kitchen, rinsing off the plates. The light above the sink cast a soft glow, and the house was enveloped in a quietude that only descends when a gathering has drawn to a close and night begins to unfold. His arrival was silent, yet his presence enveloped me. He lingered in silence, observing me intently, before making his way over and presenting a glass from the table, and softly, barely above a whisper, he murmured, "I meant that, you know." I remained silent. I was unable to. My hands glistened, trembling gently beneath the cascade of water. I focused intently on the sink, feigning ignorance to the words that hung in the air. Yet my heart, it listened, resonating with clarity. He remained silent, refraining from any further insistence. He lingered for a brief moment, then stepped outside. I lingered in that kitchen for what seemed like an eternity, grappling with the bewildering events that had just unfolded. It was merely a jest. It was inevitable. He is in his teenage years. I am his aunt. Yet as time passed, the days began to take on a new quality. He began to linger near me more often, probing with his inquiries, the minutiae of my existence, the volumes I immerse myself in, my reflections on various films, and my musings on the concept of soulmates. It was far from mere small talk. It was deliberate. He began to shower me with compliments that took me by surprise. Your eyes may carry the weight of weariness, yet they retain an undeniable beauty. Many individuals engage in conversation to ensure their voices are acknowledged. One engages in conversation to gain insight. I long for the presence of more women who embody your qualities. With each utterance of his, I sensed myself beginning to lose my grip. Initially, I dismissed it. I convinced myself that his actions were merely kind, that perhaps I was overanalyzing the situation. Yet there existed a night. Once more, Daniel had succumbed to slumber on the couch. Tessa found herself in the company of friends. Eli and I found ourselves immersed in an old movie on the patio. He positioned himself nearer than necessary, our shoulders lightly grazing against one another. He leaned in at one moment to share a joke, and I found myself momentarily captivated by his lips. Yet I gazed, and it was even more dire. I held my gaze for a moment longer. That night slumber eluded me. I reclined in bed beside my husband, observing the ceiling fan as it turned lazily in gentle circles. I reassured myself that it was all in my head, that the loneliness was a mere illusion, that I longed for the feeling of being desired, that my thoughts were deceiving me. Yet the evening in the kitchen arrived. In the aftermath, the truth became undeniable, and I could no longer deceive myself. Surely it was merely a jest, wasn't it? That is precisely what I reminded myself. It was a night like no other, unfolding in the heart of the kitchen. What is the matter with me? I've pondered that question countless times. With each dawn that broke, I sensed it anew. The persistent throb in my chest. Not quite guilt, but something akin to it. A subtle confusion that hovered just beneath the surface. I began to observe details that had previously escaped my notice. The way Eli's eyes would sparkle at the sound of my laughter was truly enchanting, or how he consistently discovered a reason to linger close, offering me something, gliding by in the corridor, locking eyes with me for just a heartbeat longer than anyone else dared. And may the heavens assist me. A longing began to stir within me, seemed amiss. It was an error. Yet, it also stirred emotions within me that I hadn't experienced in years, perhaps never before. One morning I gazed into the mirror and found a stranger staring back at me, a reflection of someone I barely knew. Yet, as I gazed a moment longer, I observed a subtle shift in the way I began to brush my hair, adorned in the dress that embraced my form, a gentle reminder of the body I once cherished. Applying lipstick, even if it meant simply remaining at home, not intended for Daniel. He wouldn't bat an eye if I strolled in clad in a wedding gown or a refused sack. Yet Eli observed, and I mistook his attention for validation. I was wrong. The minuscule glimmer. As if I were a sight to behold. He has reached adulthood, I reminded myself. 19, nearly 20. In the eyes of the law, no boundary existed. Yet, on a moral and emotional level, divine. I was aware of the truth. Yet, I was acutely aware of the sensation that accompanied being graced by another's focus. To be desired. It wasn't until the sensation returned that I recognized just how much time had passed without it. Each time Daniel strolled by, it was as if I were invisible to him. Eli inquired about the quality of my slumber, how I was truly faring. If I were happy. Those were more than mere words. He truly intended them. To be exposed after a lifetime spent in obscurity is a perilous endeavor. Unbeknownst to me, I began to distance myself from my husband. I would retire early, feigning slumber before he entered the room. I ceased my attempts to engage him in conversation, to endeavor, yet he remained oblivious. Perhaps he did, after all, and felt indifferent. In some inexplicable way, it only intensified the situation. Thus I found myself increasingly drawn to Eli. Every glance, every laugh, every subtle gesture we shared began to feel like the very breath of life. It felt as though I could finally inhale once more. I loathed myself for it. Yet, I found myself returning time and again. With each glance in the mirror, I beheld the softening traces of time. Yet within the depths of Eli's gaze, I beheld a figure of pure radiance, exquisite, highly sought after, vibrant. And then on a quiet night, after all had settled into slumber, he rapped gently on my bedroom door. The sound of a knock reverberated through my bedroom door, possessed a gentle quality, uncertain. Yet it resonated with a volume surpassing anything I had encountered in weeks. I chose not to respond. I was unable to. My heart pounded with such intensity that I was convinced he could hear it echoing through the door. I paused, breath caught in my throat, until the sound of his footsteps faded into the distance, leisurely and hesitant. Yet, despite the stillness of that night, nothing transpired. All had transformed. Following that, the nights began to elongate. Eli would remain behind long after the others had drifted into slumber, feigning interest in his phone as I busied myself with folding laundry and tidying the kitchen. He would share with me his thoughts on school, reminisce about his childhood, and express how perplexing love had turned in the modern age. And I would lend my ear. Oh, how I absorbed his words as if they were the very essence of life, quenching a thirst that had lingered for far too long. At times we found ourselves nestled on the couch, sitting closely together. Near, excessively near. We talked too much, too often, until the line between curiosity and confusion blurred all our own. He would lightly graze my hand as he offered me a drink. He allowed his fingers to linger for a moment too long as he passed me the remote. In that fleeting moment, our knees brushed against each other, and an unspoken stillness enveloped us. Not for an entire minute. It was as if flames danced within. Not in a way that feels overly theatrical or cinematic, yet in that gradual, simmering manner that stealthily ascends your spine and settles within your gut. Yet, despite everything, nothing transpired. Not at this moment. It was on that fateful night in the living room. The illumination was subdued. A film flickered softly in the background, an experience easily overlooked. It was a matter we both feigned interest in. It seems I drifted off into slumber. Upon awakening, I found him gazing at me, not merely observing but truly seeing, with a tender, throbbing intensity that left me breathless. I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper, "What?" He leaned in, as if it were the most effortless act imaginable, and whispered, "You're beautiful." I remained silent. I remained still. Then he added, "I've always longed for you to be mine." The ground seemed to vanish beneath my feet. I propped myself up, my heart pounding, searching for the right words. Everything. Yet my mind was consumed with one question. How long had he been harboring these feelings? For how long had I been allowing him to persist? I instructed him to retire for the night. My voice carried a resolute strength, chilly. It was the appropriate course of action. And he indeed did. He remained silent. He simply nodded and turned to walk away. Yet slumber eluded me that night. The sight of him standing there, so vulnerable yet so assured, lingered in my mind like a haunting echo. It lured me in. I wished to erase it from my memory, yet I found myself unable to do so. What could possibly be worse? My imagination began to wander. I envisioned how our paths might have crossed under different circumstances, were I not bound by the vows of matrimony. If he weren't my nephew by blood. I began to revisit our dialogues in my mind, his praises, those eyes of his laughter. I began to observe the manner in which I navigated his presence. As he gazed at me, I instinctively tucked my hair behind my ear. The process of selecting tops that offer a more tailored fit, it carried the essence of my beloved fragrance. How I inclined my body ever so slightly as he spoke. I reassured myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination. He was simply being kind. I was so desperate for attention that clarity eluded me. Yet I was not conjuring it in my mind, not any longer. The distance that once separated us was diminishing. Gradually, step by step, with each passing day. Yet, despite everything, no one seemed to take notice. Tessa found herself immersed in a whirlwind of activity. Daniel remained completely unaware. Within that bubble, it was solely the two of us. A serene and secluded realm of our own making. I reassured myself that I could quit whenever I wanted. I held the reins firmly in my grasp. Until I ceased to be, that night remains etched in my memory, every detail vivid and clear. The atmosphere, the illumination, the stillness preceding the tempest. The evening unfolded like a scene from a film, rich with atmosphere and possibility, exceedingly flawless, excessively unsettling, as if an event was on the brink of unfolding, even if you were unaware of what lay ahead. Tessa had ventured out of town for the weekend, a journey for professional purposes, merely a span of 2 nights. She pressed her lips gently against Eli's cheek. He tossed me a casual remark, "I appreciate you watching over him," and departed as if it were of no consequence, as if it were just another day. Daniel found himself attending a work conference. He hardly mentioned that he was leaving. I penned a brief note on the counter and then vanished for 3 days, and just like that it was solely Eli and I. Within the confines of the dwelling. Isolated, the rain had been falling steadily since the break of dawn. As evening descended, the heavens had fully split apart. Thunder rumbled with a deep, unwavering cadence. A caution murmured softly, barely audible. We remained indoors. He prepared a bowl of popcorn. I uncorked a bottle of wine. Only a single glass, I reassured myself. Simply to unwind. We selected a film we had both watched countless times before. A sense of security. Recognizable, yet there was an unmistakable sense of danger that lingered in the air that night. Just as the film reached its midpoint, darkness enveloped the room as the power abruptly cut out. In an instant, utter darkness enveloped everything, a moment of stillness. Then I heard him declare, "I'll fetch some candles." And he indeed did. He ignited 3 petite items nestled within the confines of the kitchen drawer. The flickering glow cast a gentle warmth over the surroundings. The space seemed to shrink. More inviting. More personal. He drew nearer. Once more our knees brushed against each other. I remained still. The gentle patter of rain against the windows broke the stillness of the room. And then he uttered his words. He began to speak of solitude, on the struggle of feeling unseen, even in the midst of a crowd. The pervasive sense of artificiality that enveloped everything. Academy. Romantic encounters. Dialogues with peers of the same age. He remarked that it seems no one truly pays attention anymore. And I grasped the essence. I see now. I expressed to him that my feelings mirrored his own. There were days when I sensed I was merely a specter, drifting through the very fabric of my existence. He gazed at me and remarked, "You deserve more than that. You have always done so." The stillness enveloped the surroundings. The sort of stillness that lingers, challenging you to disturb its peace. He inclined forward. I allowed him to continue without interruption. I ought to have. I am aware of that. I ought to have risen, turned my back, uttered a word, any word at all. However, I did not. He leaned in. I should have stepped away. That hesitation cost me. As his fingers brushed against my face, and his hand found its way to the nape of my neck, drawing me in ever so slightly, I felt it. That ache I had concealed for ages burst forth like a deluge. It was never meant to unfold this way. I never anticipated experiencing life anew. However, I did, and in those moments I must confess I felt anything but a wife, or perhaps a beloved aunt, or an individual who ought to possess greater insight. A sense of being desired enveloped me. Noted. Adored. In that moment of his touch, all else faded from my mind. My union. My sibling. Every justification I possessed to halt this before it began. What I understood was that it had been years since I experienced such a profound sense of closeness. I wished for it to continue indefinitely. That night transformed everything. How I longed to declare that the story concluded at that point. Yet it did not. Join Heartfelt Tales Unfold to ensure you catch the upcoming twists in the story. Upon the dawn that followed, everything felt altered. He smiled at me as if everything remained the same, as if the very ground had not trembled beneath us. Yet, I found myself unable to return the smile. Not entirely, not in the manner he had envisioned. The daylight cast a weight upon everything, imbuing the air with a palpable heaviness. Authentic, incorrect. And yet, as he extended his hand to gently grasp mine while offering the coffee, I found myself not withdrawing. Thus commenced the unraveling. It unfolded gradually. It slipped in softly and gradually, like a mist that envelopes you, only to reveal its presence when you find it hard to breathe. Eli began to message me incessantly. Small details in the beginning. Good morning, cheerful one. Last night was truly remarkable. You occupy my thoughts incessantly. I found myself gazing at my phone, my heart racing in anticipation. Times I would respond. At other moments I would erase the messages before even glancing at them. Yet, regardless of my actions, the guilt lingered, gnaws at me, residing beneath my surface. And then Tessa returned home. As she stepped through the threshold, her first words hung in the air. Something feels off in here. I chuckled a bit too soon. I explained to her that it was merely the weather, yet she gazed at me, truly gazed, as sisters often do when they sense that something is amiss. Eli maintained his composure, perhaps excessively cool. He maintained the same tone, the identical smile, yet there was a certain depth in his gaze, as if he were anticipating something from me, a certain indication, a subsequent course of action. Yet I found myself at a loss for what to offer him. That very night, Daniel returned. He pressed a weary kiss to my forehead, then took a seat at the dinner table, his words few and far between. Yet, as he savored his meal, he paused, glanced my way, and remarked, "You've been distant lately. Are you all right?" I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. It wasn't merely the words themselves. It was the manner in which he articulated them. He felt no jealousy. He felt no anger. He seemed diminutive, uncertain, a man aware that something had changed, yet unable to discern exactly what it was. I expressed to him my weariness, held the weather accountable. Yet another deception. It was at that moment that I began to distance myself. I ceased attending family dinners, ceased to occupy the living room when the crowd had assembled, found myself retreating to the kitchen more often, cleaning dishes that were already clean, steering clear of discussions, steering clear of direct gaze, steering clear of my own presence, for the reason that all had transformed. Each time my gaze fell upon Tessa, an oppressive weight settled upon my chest, as if a brick had taken residence there. She would share her visions for Eli's future, his aspirations, his college ambitions, and I would respond with nods, smiles, and all the appropriate words. Each word pierced me from within. I observed him from a distance, taking note of the way his gaze lingered on me when the world around us remained oblivious. Times I would reflect on the past. Yet now the expanse that separated us was suffused with silence. An oppressive, unyielding silence that left us both at a loss for words. Just when I believed that everything had found its equilibrium, when I thought I could allow this to fade away without disturbing the delicate balance, Tessa strolled into the kitchen one morning, coffee in hand, and announced, "Hey, Eli's got a college tour next weekend. I am unable to accompany him. Could you possibly take him instead?" My gaze fell upon her. All that occupied my mind was the moment Tessa requested me to accompany Eli on his college tour. Just the two of us. I betrayed not just my sister. I turned against my own essence. The echoes of those words lingered in my mind, repeating endlessly. Inside the vehicle, within the confines of the shower, awake in the stillness of the night, I find myself gazing at the ceiling, contemplating how I allowed things to spiral to this point. There existed no justification. No tidy rationale could reverse the actions I had taken, the actions we had taken. And still, each time I attempted to entomb it, to suppress it, to feign its absence, his visage would emerge in my thoughts like a specter. Those captivating eyes, on that particular night, his gaze upon me was as if I were a precious gem, something truly unique. Yet, the harshness of reality often intrudes upon the realm of dreams. In that moment, as you stand in the college campus parking lot, you observe the boy who once whispered that you were beautiful, now smiling at a girl his age, his expression imbued with the same gentle warmth. It ought not to have taken me by surprise. He is in the bloom of youth, attractive, brimming with vitality. What girl at that age could possibly resist such allure? What could possibly keep him from being captivated by her? Her eyes sparkled with a lively brilliance, vibrant, possessed that reckless assurance unique to young women, as if the world had yet to leave its marks upon them. I observed him chuckle at her words, observed her fingers graze his arm, observed him allowing her to proceed, and something within me broke, not in wrath, yet cloaked in shame. The grotesque, contorted nature of shame that compels one to vanish into the shadows. I remained rooted in place, arms folded, striving to maintain a composed expression, striving to suppress emotions. Yet, jealousy seeped in regardless, and trailing closely behind it, revulsion. Upon him, upon reflection, at all that we have allowed to unfold. Could this merely have been a fleeting moment for him? Is it a dream woven from the threads of imagination? A rush of excitement? Did I confuse attention with affection? Did I merely crave the sensation of being desired one final time before the world ceased to notice me? I found myself pondering, what was it that I truly desired from him? Could it have been love? Or was it merely the mirage of love, cloaked in the gentle radiance of being acknowledged, listened to, and wanted? For when the absence of touch stretches on, even the most misguided attention can seem like a lifeline. I contemplated the idea of revealing my truth, informing Tessa, taking responsibility for my actions. But how does one convey such sentiments to their sister? How can one so utterly break another's trust and still hope to endure the aftermath? How do you meet your husband's gaze and confess that your solitude drove you to a companion half your age, a person who refers to you as auntie in the presence of others? I found myself revisiting it repeatedly in my thoughts, time and time again. This is how I would begin. Here's what I would express. Yet, the opportunity eluded me. Just when I believed the situation couldn't possibly deteriorate further, Tessa stumbled upon Eli's journal. What actions would you have taken? Is that so? I seek understanding. Have you ever found yourself making a decision that you instinctively knew was misguided? Yet, in that instant it seemed just right. Indeed, that is correct. It hushed all that surrounded it. Reasoning, remorse, rationale, even affection, for that is precisely what transpired in my case. Since that moment, each day has been consumed by it, struggling to find clarity in it all, seeking to comprehend how something so ephemeral could create a fissure so profound. It extends beyond the confines of my marriage. It extends beyond my family, yet within me. If you're still tuned in, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever found yourself poised on the brink, toes gripping the edge, your heart shouting one desire while your conscience pleads for restraint? We welcome your reflections and insights in the comments section. Your words could resonate with someone out there in ways you can't even imagine. Should you wish to stay tuned for our next story of entwined emotions, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. These narratives belong to more than just me. They belong to all of us. Narratives woven with threads of affection, remorse, allure, and honesty. The narrator speaks softly, a tone of solemnity enveloping each carefully chosen word, heavy with the burden of lived experience. Love weaves a tapestry of complexity, chaotic, exquisite, perilous. Yet, the anguish of traversing boundaries we cannot revert. It endures through the ages. Eli has moved forward. Naturally, he did. He is in the bloom of youth. The world continues to reveal itself before him. Occasionally, I catch glimpses of him in photographs, within the realm of Tessa's social media. Beaming, brilliant, as if he remains oblivious to what he carried away with him that night. Yet I am aware. I have yet to reclaim that version of myself, the iteration that found peace in slumber, the iteration that believed in her own image, the iteration that held steadfast to the notion that love and loyalty were inseparable companions. I embrace my decisions in the present moment. Not every day is a trial to endure. There are days when I momentarily lose track of it all, yet the burden remains ever present. Not quite. I'm sharing this tale not in search of absolution, but to illuminate the truth, for an individual positioned at the brink where I once found myself. Perhaps, just perhaps, if you listen to my story, you'll pause for a moment and reflect. And not ahead. At times, the most profound scars are those we inflict upon our own hearts.